For our persuasive speech, my speech is going to persuade you guys to be pro-assisted suicide, as am I. Assisted suicide is where the patient has to take final action themselves. Instead of leaving it up to a family member or a doctor, they can decide for themselves. Usually they have a will or they don't. The suicide machine, how it started was lethal doses of medication, had to do with carbon monoxide, kind of not necessarily a slow, but it wasn't a painful death. The guy that made it up, his name was actually Jack, but they called him Dr. Death, and he went to prison for 7 years for doing this. He helped 130 people commit physician-assisted suicide. He was a doctor, so he knew what he was doing, but they still didn't find it appropriate to be doing. But he helped 130 people complete this. He actually, when he was in prison, he was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, Dr. Death was, and they actually helped him commit suicide with lethal injection himself, and he actually allowed them to tape it, the whole 60 minutes, and they showed it on TV because he wanted to promote it and show people what it was like. The reason why people normally want to basically be put to sleep is because they have a very painful or terminal illness. You normally cannot receive physician-assisted suicide if you have a short illness, if they know it's going to get better, if you have a mental issue, something like diabetes, they won't allow you to do it. But if you have something like brain cancer or lung cancer and they basically know that you're not going to get better, they will allow you to do it. One of the reasons people don't see it as very moral is because of their religion. A lot of say, they quote, "Thou shalt not kill," because they see it more as murder, more as a sin. But if you put aside religion, you might get more in depth to it. Some of the cons people have with it are that they see it as a halfway house. They see it more as a drug thing, not helping somebody really achieve what they want when they're in that sort of pain and suffering. Another thing people see it as, for cons, they see it as you're strictly just killing patients and there's no benefit to it. It's not benefiting the physician. It's not benefiting the family, the friends, the person themselves. They just see it as strictly, basically murder and basically just straight suicide. People in a certain religion group or people that just don't believe in it at all, they believe in right to live and a right to die, as they normally say. That you were born a certain way and you live your life basically how it was planned to live, and then you die however you basically die. So car accident, natural causes, illness, that you wither away from that and you don't get help from it because that's how your life was planned and that's how it was meant to be. So when it comes to cons, it's more of really a religion thing. The pros, which I am totally for and hope all of you would be for too, is the pros of this is it's really to avoid excruciating pain that nobody can handle, and have a timely death. If they want to die at a certain point in time, then they're basically more than welcome to, as long as they have that will available. Just because it really is your body, you should be able to decide what to do with it. A lot of people see suicide as really just killing themselves and it being on a burden, but I believe that when it's in a hospital, it is totally different. You're having help doing it. It's for an actual reason because you're really, really sick. You might be in a lot of pain. And I actually did a debate on this in participation in government in high school, and one of my points was that imagine your pet super, super, super sick, or had cancer, or really anyone in your family. Would you want to just see them in pain for the rest of their lives, or if that was their one true wish to really just end it, would you allow them to do that? And I truly believe that that's okay to do, just because I know I myself would not want to be in excruciating pain if I had a choice to not be, and I knew I wasn't going to get any better. A lot of people like to do this because really they're respecting the patient's wishes, and it is only legal in 5 states. So in these 5 states, I should say, they like to respect their patient's wishes, and as they call it, it's death with dignity. So kind of goes without saying. The living will provides evidence. So if anyone were to say, maybe a family member or something, say, oh, well, they didn't want to have physician-assisted suicide or blah, 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 they could say, this is the living will, this is what they wanted. For example, I read an article online, and this guy stated in his living will that he did not want a feeding tube whatsoever. He died 7 years ago. He didn't want a feeding tube, and his wife insisted on him having one, and they couldn't give him one because in his will, in his writing, in his words, he did not want one. I think the reason that I'm so for this is because from personal experience, my best friend's dad and I were super duper close, and he was sick for 10 years, all throughout high school. It got to the point where he couldn't walk, couldn't talk, he could hardly breathe. Every time he stood up, his legs went purple, and it got to the point where he was basically just withering away to nothing because he was so out of it. And her mom signed off the papers to not resuscitate, to not do anything, and he also did it. He had a will saying he didn't want to be resuscitated, which you can do. Physician-assisted suicide is not legal in New York State right now, so the whole resuscitation thing is the farthest you can get that comes close to it. Right now it's legal in the Netherlands. It's legal in Oregon, Montana, Washington, Vermont, and California. Most states require that you have to be 18, but I think that's more than understandable. And the physician-assisted person that works with you, they go through a lot of training. They have to have all these certifications for basically being able to do that, to perform something like that on a human being. My personal opinion, once again, is that I am totally all for it. I don't believe in human pain or human suffering. I agree with having to be 18. I agree with having to have a living will just so that there is evidence. And I really hope that a lot of you are more for it, and hopefully it is legal, just because, as I stated before, you wouldn't want to see anyone suffering in your family or a close friend or even a pet. So I hope most of you are now pros as opposed to cons. If not, it's definitely something to think about.